Hey Joe, great to be with you. Thanks so much for taking time out for this series.
Good to be here. I'm glad you're having me here. I've always wanted to talk to you, and here we are.
Well, I'm blown away that we haven't captured you on film because of the legacy and the journey that you've been on all these years.
I haven't been captured on film, but I have been captured before.
Uh-oh, well we'll save that for the B-roll. Well, you were telling me a little bit of your epic life's journey, going back to being a kid in south of Italy, coming over. I mean, share with me a little bit of that early formative experience of, steaming to New York, having a master craftsman as a dad, being one of 8 kids. I mean, that's gotta create some unique DNA.
Well, it all started for me in a little town called Lamezia Terme in Calabria, where my dad was the town carpenter, and he was a master carpenter who was building furniture in the Art Deco style. So he would build the furniture, design the furniture, build the furniture in his own little shop that was on the ground level of our house. He all the time I lived with my parents. They always had a shop set up either in the house or in the garage. So I early learned the craft of being a carpenter, and not so much being a carpenter, but my dad taught me what it was to be a craftsman. And it was the skills of a craftsman, the attention to detail, how important striving for perfection was. He taught me, never be happy with what you've done. Always look for how you can improve it. That was my dad in a nutshell. So my family, it's after the war. World War II. It's 1954. My dad had been in the U.S. for 1 year, where he actually lived in Detroit, got a job as a carpenter in Detroit, and he made enough money to buy a house, to buy tickets for a ship, to put his family on a ship in Naples and bring us all to New York Harbor, where he comes and picks us up and takes us to Detroit for no better place. He had a friend in Detroit. That's why we wind up in Detroit. And no one knew the language, no one knew the culture, but it was starting at zero. It was starting all over again. It's an immigrant story, that's how it was. Fortunately, the Detroit at that time had a really good public education system, and it picked us up. It taught us the language. It taught us the culture. It gave us a good education, and fortunately, I was able to make something of it.
And that was your kind of introduction to the theatrical world, right? Through just high school musicals.
Yes. So I'm going to school at it's the Magnet School in downtown Detroit, which was an old Art Deco building that had about 8,000 students in it, and it had a 3,500 seat theater that had a fly system. And
it's larger than most Broadway theaters.
Yes, it
today.
is.
That's impressive.
So I have a friend who's doing a play, the high school play of the year, and she says, they're behind on building the scenery for the play. I know you're a carpenter. Why don't you see if you can help them? So she got me interested, and I started working on the stage crew. I helped them build the set. And before you know it, for the next play, which was Bye Bye Birdie, I became the stage manager, and I stage managed. So I saw the whole, what does it take to put on a show, from the inside out. And literally, since that play, I have not been out of theater.
Wow.
I literally...
Just the stage has gotten a little bigger.
Yeah, the stage has gotten way bigger, more complicated, but
You
It's
thought
all-
that 3,500 seat room was big.
I love the idea that you were doing something that you were showing to people that was making that group of people happy about
Mhm.
something. You know, I like the idea of doing something that was a positive, you know, that you were showing something to people and they were giving something back. They were giving back their enjoyment of what you did.
Wow. Well, how did you make the transition from the straight theater world to Imagineering, Wet Enterprises?
It took
Yeah,
a long time. I was actually, after I graduated from the university, and I got a master's of fine arts degree in theatrical design. And I did educational theater at 3 different universities for 8 years, starting at Western Illinois University for 3 years, Auburn University for 3 years, and then Auburn, or UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas for 2 years. The Nevada job, I was the technical director. I was designing shows. I was designing scenery, designing lights. There was a really good dance company, the Nevada Dance Company, that I got introduced to doing lighting for dance, and I really enjoyed that. And I probably would have done that had I not seen an ad in a journal that said that Walt Disney Imagineering, White Enterprises at that time, was looking for designers for Epcot Center. And I said, well, what could it hurt? I'm not that far away. Let me apply and see what happens. And I applied, got an interview, and they said, well, okay, when can you start? And I literally had to get out of a teaching contract mid-year in order to make that happen. So that's how I wound up in Imagineering. And I wound up doing lighting design because they were looking for lighting designers, not so much set designers at the time. So I thought, well, lighting design would be a foot in the door for other things. But I started doing lighting and doing only lighting, and I really enjoyed that. It brought me to seeing a complete project. We were involved from concept to the very end. So I saw the whole trajectory of a project and was involved in the whole trajectory and could affect how, you know, it would turn out. And I thoroughly enjoyed being at the end of the project where I saw how the project was taken in by the guests. Guests and kids walking out of the attraction and seeing the smiles on their faces and seeing how they reacted. That was enough for me, you know.
Now I'm blown away by the amount of projects just in that opening day Epcot, Spaceship Earth, the Land, later the Living Seas, but France, Germany, inside, outside. How in the world did you pull that off?
I don't know. It was youth energy.
Okay,
it was
maybe some adrenaline source from different.
It wasn't,
or caffeine.
You know, failure was not a possibility. It was like you just did it. And it was the other people that you work with that had similar attitudes. It was really the can do. We can do this. We can do it. And there was no other thing that was possible than doing it. And it took crazy hours. You know, it was like, I remember working on average of about 80 hours a week in the field. And it was like very little sleep. It was just about getting the job done and always being available. It was the days of a hand radio. And even when you went to bed, you put your radio and you left it on because you never know when you were needed on site.
Wow.
It was always about being ready to go, and it was about getting it done.
It's a little bit different than today's work ethic. That's I imagine some of those relationships that were formed in the trenches there are, still going strong. I know, like Pat Gallegos is a mutual friend.
You find out who you can trust,
Yeah.
right? It's like war situation. You know who you can totally trust in that situation. You know that when somebody says something, they're going to do it. They're always going to show up, no matter what happens. They're always going to be there.
So 40 years later, you still have some of these friends and partners
I
like
still
Pat
have, and I have
others?
Pat. I have those friends anywhere where I've done a project.
That's neat.
I have those friends in Paris. I have those friends in Tokyo. I have those friends in Hong Kong. I have those friends in China, and I have those friends in Italy because I also worked on a Disney cruise ship, the Wonder.
Oh, nice. Wonder. That's awesome. Well, I did want to rewind back when you started on Epcot, kind of where, looking in the rearview mirror, where the art of theme park lighting was, back in the olden days of Disneyland and rim lighting and popcorn lighting, kind of borrowed from, where, was that kind of almost prehistoric in a sense, or was it still charming compared to the tools?
The original designers of Disneyland really knew what they were doing. They were trained in doing film, and they knew about telling a story. They didn't necessarily have the technology to do some things, but then they invented things. They invented new technology that if they couldn't find something, they would build it themselves. The popcorn lighting on Main Street. They invented a system of rim lighting where they could edge light all the buildings on Main Street, and they invented a system of cables in different lengths. Each had a light socket at one end with an incandescent lamp. They had a male-female connector, and they would pop these things together and follow the edge of a building. And then the ingenious thing is that they knew that these lamps would burn out quickly, so they would use a 32-volt lamp and run it at 24 volts that exponentially increased the lamp life of that little incandescent lamp. And it provided a nicer glow, a better,
softer,
much softer glow. And it's a system that's been used for years and still is being used.
It beats my Christmas lights, I'm sure.
They also came up with the first moving light. Do you know where the first moving light ever was used?
I had no idea.
It was used in Country Bear Jamboree Show, where Teddy Bear comes down from the flies, and she's followed by a spotlight that has an iris that adjusts. Maple invented that spotlight and tied it to the programming system, made it all work. They came up with the first digital program dimmers. Nobody needed a digital dimmer prior to Disney running shows over and over again. Nobody built such a thing. Maple came up with a dimmer that would do that was programmable. It was rudimentary at the time, but it was an incredible leap at that time. Sometimes the things don't seem so big, but in actuality they are.
Well, as you were sharing with me, kind of going from the original Disneyland, the inspiration from Tivoli, and then the inspiration coming from the old World's Fairs, and really the whole celebration of electricity.
The celebration of electricity was, the exposition area, the turn of the century, and how some Tivoli Gardens picked up on it, and Walt, before building Disneyland, visited places like Tivoli and other parks in Europe. He visited Mackinac Island in Michigan that had the sort of Main Street.
In time.
And he took Marceline, right, where his hometown, and he took all those places and made an ideal Main Street that he decided to edge everything in, the rim lights.
Oh, even the Henry Ford, right? Greenfield Village.
And Greenfield Village, he visited.
In your hometown.
He definitely visited Greenfield Village.
Wow.
And the introduction of the theatrical, I think, was something that the Epcot team, the lighting group, brought to Disney, because most of our group was theatrical lighting designers. So when I got to design Pirates for Paris, I used modern theatrical techniques. I didn't take literally the same lighting that was done at Disneyland, that was done with very simple fixtures and very simple control systems. I added side light, I added backlight where it was necessary. I added positions, I added stronger theatrical fixtures. So in a way, I tried to use lighting to give it even more of a mood. I think it was in the Disneyland Paris Pirates, there's more use of color, and stronger use of lighting angles.
It blows me away, the evolution of the projects that you've done to kind of rediscovering neon with Disney's Hollywood or Disney MGM Studios.
Yeah, that was
Hollywood Boulevard.
That was a lot of fun. It was like, for each project you steep yourself in that era that it's in, and it's fun to research a time frame, and literally what I do is I immerse myself in that time frame. And I literally find whatever I can find in books or films and totally try to absorb it all in. And I usually find more than I need, but I kind of try to synthesize and use what I need to do to do the project. On Hollywood Studios, it was all about neon and the Art Deco and all the different things that Hollywood has to do with. We reproduced the Chinese theater facade for the Great Movie.
Full scale, right?
Full scale. Yeah. And then we put a ride inside of it, the Great Movie Ride, and I got to light scenes from all these great films. I got to reproduce.
I'm so sad that I can't just ride that this weekend.
And that was a lot of fun. It was like, and it was a long ride. It was like 17 to 20 minutes long.
Yep.
And it had live action in it. It was a great attraction. For the Chinese theater, we reproduced all the lighting fixtures. We actually got permission to go to Grauman's Chinese and measure everything and do photo documentation of all their lighting fixtures. And we found a company that would build them for us based on those dimensions. So it's the real thing,
Well, I remember the first time I went through Hollywood Boulevard, I'd actually been working on Sunset Boulevard at the Crossroads of the World building for American Film Magazine, and actually spent a lot of time at night on Hollywood Boulevard, and it really felt like I had died and gone to a heavenly recreation of the Hollywood that, I don't think really ever was. But
yeah, it's a Hollywood that should have been.
Right. It really was kind of the real world, kind of redeemed, renewed, and improved, in a lot of ways. And
it's still there, which is great.
It's great. That's true. The heart and soul of that park is still pretty much intact. But then again, you keep turning it to 11. Post Hollywood Studios, Disneyland Paris, Adventureland, and then heading over to Tokyo and Disney Seas and Mysterious Island. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite.
I think it may be one of my favorite as well.
Yeah.
And I got to work with Jules Verne again, who I loved as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm attracted to Jules Verne, and I got to live in his world, during the time that I worked on that project. We did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, the volcano, a full-scale volcano with an eruption that happened every few hours.
Wow.
And to the side of that was this fortress, this exploration fortress, where it was the best of the Renaissance. You know, all the mechanical things and the exploration, the age of exploration that happens in that attraction. Um, it was an amazing experience, and it was like rethinking of what those places could be. You know, it was a drive for wet on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where we had these little miniature submarines that went through the underwater, you know, land that never was,
Mm-hmm.
where we used a lot of black light effects, and then Journey to the Center of the Earth, where we had uh, um, we had crystal caverns, and we had terravators that dropped you to the center of the earth. We had mushroom forests and undersea underground seas, and then a lava monster that attacks you and coming out of the lava at the end of the show, and then you get catapulted out into the caldera. It was like, it was a lot of work, and it was like programming in the wintertime outside, but it was all worth it. It was
Wow.
like it was thoroughly enjoyable, and it was like everybody that worked on that project, and it wasn't just my land. It was like the whole project had their heart and souls into it. Everybody was trying to make that the best it could possibly be.
Well, you guys definitely pulled it off. I'll give you that much. It's, to me, it's still probably my favorite land. But again, still not resting on your laurels. Talking about next level. Last interview I did like this was with Zolt Herme, and I said, man, you've built mountains. Come on, like. What's your favorite, proudest achievement? And I think he mentioned something about some floating islands, Pandora.
Floating mountains is a good way
Yeah.
to go out, and that was my last project,
Okay.
and it was probably the most complicated lighting that I'd ever done. You know, I had done complicated lighting inside of a building, but it was taking all those things that we did in attractions inside where you can control, you didn't have to mess with weather. You took all those things that you were used to doing inside and you went outside.
Mm-hmm.
And outside, it was a grand scale. It was the whole land that was given a treatment of normally what you did inside, and it was heavy use of LED fixtures, black light effects, glowing pavement, really a lot of programming, just an incredible amount of programming and activity. The whole story of what happens in that nighttime with the creatures in the landscape and how the lighting worked with the creatures. It was just an overall, something you wanted to be involved with.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of fun.
What a joy to be part of that. Have you seen kind of a blending between kind of the show theatrical lighting and the architectural lighting as far as just industry kind of?
Definitely. There's, when we started, I think Disney was the only ones that were applying themed lighting to exteriors of buildings and to restaurants and to retail spaces. We were always doing it in the shows, but we took it a step further. And I think the business saw that. I think the retailers saw how themed treatments
Mm-hmm.
would help their products. And restaurants definitely, bringing in theming inside of a restaurant brought in people, right? Also, the lighting of exterior of iconic buildings. There was never color used or programs used. In the past, there were very few attractions, very few architectural pieces that were really seriously lit at night. And I think you see that in cityscapes all over the world now. Look at Hong Kong, where there's so much lighting on the exterior buildings, and really some really good lighting.
Wow. One of the things that I was curious about, you've worked with a pantheon of some amazing art directors and creative directors, from Tony Baxter to Tim Delaney and Joe Rohde. Is there any styles or collaborators or creative, what is it that allows you to be creative, as one of, multiple,
I won't mention names. I like working with some more than others.
Of course.
I tended to gravitate with the person who had the whole project in mind, and who saw the value of all the disciplines and how they affected their project. I will bring up one name. I really enjoyed working with Tim Delaney.
Sure.
He was my ideal art director, and we worked on Space Mountain together in Paris. We did the Living Seas Pavilion at Epcot Center. And then we did the new Tomorrowland at Disneyland.
Yeah.
I enjoyed working with other, I worked with so many art directors, and at the Disney level, they're all really incredible art directors. You hit that level, you've gotten the peak, and it was like they vary as far as how you get things done, but
different styles.
It's all workable. Ultimately, if you put the job in front of, personal things, it's about the job and it's about the product. And if everybody concentrates on that, that's what should happen.
Yeah. It's like you can get to the destination, but the journey can be a lot funner.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
I mean, and you put the hammer right on the nail. It's like, you got to have fun at it.
Yeah.
If you can't have fun at it, you shouldn't be doing it. You really shouldn't be doing it. You got to find something. I've done lesser jobs. And all my jobs haven't been the big stuff, but you got to find something that you like doing about that job. You've got to find something about that thing that makes you want to do it.
Well, for me, your discipline is one that, it's pretty obvious to understand the difference of if you visit any of the Tomorrowlands, frankly, by day versus by night, or a Pandora during daytime and nighttime, to understand the exponential difference that what your craft brings to the table can do. It's really powerful.
At Pandora, people actually line up at night.
Oh, sure.
To wait for the light change.
Absolutely.
That's a pleasure when that happens.
Absolutely. What's Pandora without bioluminescence, right? Well, I want to just kind of close out just talking about that aspect of legacy. What do you find value and meaning in ultimately? Is it the amazing experiences that you've created, the quality of the craftsmanship, the people? I mean, what do you find most significance and meaning?
Before I retired from Disney, I thought it would be about the projects. I have a legacy of projects that I'm proud of. But ultimately, as I put Disney in the rearview mirror, I think the legacy is about some of those young designers that helped me on projects. And at the time, I was it was more of a practical thing. I was teaching them so they could help me, get the jobs done. But I enjoyed giving knowledge and seeing them grow. And I'm really proud of the people, the designers that are still at Disney and what they're doing. In the rearview mirror, I see those people as my legacy. And I'm so proud of what they've done and what they continue to do at Disney.
Wow. It really is just such an honor, and I'm so humbled to be here with Giuseppe Falzetta.
Grazie, certo, sei buono.
A true master of the craft. Thanks so much for your time, and really appreciate you pouring into this.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having me here.
Awesome.
Hey, Joe,
Hey there.
you changed shirts.
I did, and I lost 20 pounds too since we last talked.
Great job. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Well, there was a little bit of audio time delay. We'll just blame that on our changing of the shirts and
It was a special effect.
Yeah. So great to be with you. Thanks so much for the time. And I just feel like we went on this epic journey from Italy to Pandora and back, and here we are in the
we've been all over.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, really pleased that some of the familiar, at least names, if not faces, that were able to join us, including your partner in crime, Pat Gallegos. Hey, Pat. And had some great questions, some team members. Actually, we've got a new team member on our Storyland side. Tyler Thornburg actually just joined us, and it's his first official day. So I won't say that he was forced to watch this, but he actually was pretty excited once he heard you're on the docket. And he actually had a great question, which is, was there ever a time when you were experimenting with lighting technology that didn't exactly live up to, the full expectation, or even had some unintended, surprising kind of results, including, kind of innovations?
Yeah. Well, actually, that happened all the time. It actually, the first time you do something doesn't always work out. And you make a value judgment. Is this going to work? And if there's hints that it's going to work, you just keep at it until it does work. And it's not only in lighting. It wasn't just the designer making that happen. You work with manufacturers and vendors, and who would often bring products to you, and you saw that you had to see the possibility in what they were doing in order to help them make something for you to use. And that happened very often with us.
I had a great question come in from Sabrina Hibben. Really, we're pretty passionate about process, at Storyland. I know at Disney, we actually feel like our core product actually is our process. I would love to say that the journey really that you take defines the destination. We talked about kind of the people that you take with you on that road trip or on that journey definitely determines the fun factor and how enjoyable the journey is. But when it comes to process to convey a story through, feeling, ambience that comes with lighting, tell me about the evolution of kind of your ideal process. Did you stumble upon that, relatively quickly in the early days as far as the most efficient way to work, or really is that something that's evolved over your career?
In being involved in theater before I started at WDI, I already had a process in play for designing sets and lighting. And it just became exponentially more complicated at Disney. But really, it was a very similar process. You delved into the story, you did what was necessary for the story. At the same time, you were dealing with practicality. You knew how much time you had to do something. You knew how much money you had to do something, and it's like you need to have your head in the air and your feet on the ground, in order to make things happen.
Awesome. Michael Coney, who has an awesome last name, is asking what your favorite light or fixture of yours is, and how do you use the qualities of that light to tell stories?
It really depends on the show that I'm working on. I have so many favorite fixtures. I'm not locked into fixtures so much as to what they will do for the project that I'm using them for. I have favorite manufacturers, and I like sturdy fixtures. I like well-built fixtures that last. That's really important in what we do when you're building something that's going to be in one of the parks for 5, 10, 20 plus years, So that's an important factor.
Yeah, I imagine your palette has expanded over the years. What was available when you started versus today?
Yes, indeed. but the variety of fixtures we use is just astounding. Going the full range of theatrical to architectural fixtures, almost any kind of light fixture imaginable. We interact with decorative fixtures, with theme lighting, and so there's a whole slew of things that we use, and it's really a matter of what's on your plate and what project you're working on.
As far as again over the decades, any major technological evolutions that really, I'm thinking of things like LED or some of the controls that have really just been pretty radical.
Every
game changers.
Decade I was at Disney, there was a technological development. Nothing gets frozen in time. So at one point it was, it's 12 volts. Everything is 12 volts in the MR16 lamp, the small MR. And then eventually LEDs started to come in. The early LEDs were just awful, but they developed and became something usable. So there's a whole slew of LED fixtures available that you can do almost anything with. Controls have grown in leaps and bounds. What we can do with controls and programming now is just incredible. You can literally get timing and sequencing down in short periods of time. It used to be a really laborious process to program even simple things. It would just take forever. Avatar was a heavy, intensively programmed land, but we got it done in just a few months, really, the test and adjust part of it.
Wow, that's amazing. That's hard to believe. One of my friends, Adam Sharp, is asking how'd your work specifically in educational theater help in working in themed entertainment? Like, what were the major things that transitioned right in versus the contrasts or the differences?
Well, with educational theater, I was basically the technical director for the theater on campus at the 3 universities where I worked. So I was building scenery, I was designing scenery, I was designing the lighting, and then building the sets and being involved with rehearsals and putting the shows on and training students to run the shows. I was also teaching classes in the theatrical arts. I was teaching scene design, scene painting, stage lighting, stagecraft. It was really helpful for me because I got experience in working with people and putting shows together, and which was immensely important in working later on at WDI.
How long would you say is your apprentice journey if you were to take a trainee on to get them to where you'd be really comfortable trusting them with the job you're too busy for? But
in order to be a really valuable lighting designer at Disney, it's about a 10-year process. It's starting with small acting as an assistant at the beginning, real hands-on experience in the field, and then getting tasked with doing some small jobs. Eventually, the jobs become more complicated, and eventually you're turned loose on a major project.
Yeah, Liz is asking, if you're a young person looking to end up where you are today, what would your first step be in retrospect? What would you do differently, perhaps, or any advice for someone just?
Well, advice for people getting into the business, I would say being a specialist is really important. Get really, really good at something that you like doing. I mean, really, really get good at it. But at the same time, don't neglect being a generalist. Learn as much as you can about the other crafts and how they work to put things together. I would say get as much hands-on experience as you can. And that could be in a local theater, could be at a university theater. Any way you can get some hands-on experience. Also, read as much as you can about what you want to do. Read as much as you can about designing and also the technical part of lighting design. You have to be sort of an engineer, and you have to be an art director at the same time. You're all over the place, but you have to make both of those sides of the house work.
Yeah. Sheeta had a similar question, just, given today's job market economy, any advice on the best place to get started in themed entertainment, whether that's geography or, company type or attraction type or niche? Where do you see some?
Well, I would say introduce yourself to the business, get to know people, go to TEA events, attend things like this and other things that the TEA puts on, but really get to know people, and they will help you. The organization will help you.
Love it. Plug TEA Next Gen. Sign up if you're not already a member. I love Zach's question. He wants to go on a little virtual tour of your house, all the way apparently from the bedroom to the bathroom. But his question is simply, what kind of lights do you have in your house? I'm imagining this awesome Studio 54 disco environment. The 20,000.
I do not have that. I did all that in the theme parks. I can't afford the lighting that I do.
Yep, I hear you. Awesome. Daniel's got a great question. In the interview, you mentioned those that you taught as your legacy. What would you say is some of the best advice you could give to kind of those young designers, if you haven't already given it on this?
Well, I have a cheat sheet, okay, of advice to designers. You want to hear it?
Absolutely.
The first item is get involved with TEA events, attend mixers and webinars. Read as much as you can on themed entertainment. Read Marty Sklar's books on Imagineering, theatrical design theory and practice. Watch the Disney Plus series on Imagineering.
I just made a client do that today.
Do that by all means. Be curious about a lot of things. Good to be a generalist, know something about a lot of things. Be a specialist. Be amazing at something you enjoy doing. Be aware of what others are doing in your discipline and related fields. Attend art exhibits, theme parks, museums, public installation, theatrical productions. Keep up with technology in your discipline. For lighting, attend Light Fair, LDI. Go to Light and Build in Frankfurt if you ever get a chance. I mentioned getting as much practical experience as you can possibly get. Be a good observer. You never know when you might use something that you casually see in daily life. Build a resume and a portfolio. And the last thing is be persistent and never give up.
Well, that was a great cheat sheet to your book. I want to know when that's coming out, because that's pretty inspirational.
I get awesome. That question asked a lot, and I really thought a lot about it. Those topics could be expanded maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, no, really one of the most succinct answers to that question I've ever heard. So thanks for thinking through that in advance. That's really invaluable advice for anyone that just heard that for the first time, or any of those pieces. Adam had another question for you. Just, we're such a multidisciplinary art form, right? With this collective art form we call themed entertainment. And, certainly your discipline is such a core necessity. How has collaboration changed over time? How have you, whether that's technologies or org chart structures and, team structures, and then as a follow-up, the human factor of different egos, different personality and leadership types. Any advice on navigating that.
In the interview, I kind of hinted at just get into the story. Let that be the guide. Don't get involved with politics. Avoid politics at all costs. Collaboration hasn't changed. The theater people have been doing that for years. And it's a good way to go. Always keep your eye on the show. Always keep your eye on what you're doing. And understand that the other disciplines are also trying to do the same thing that you're doing. Every discipline is contributing.
I love it. I've got one final bonus question that I hope it doesn't catch you off guard, but this is just armchair imagining blue sky. If you were able to pick your own themed environment, whether it's a land or a park, a world, what would it be? To choose your subject matter and light it accordingly. Underwater, off world, night as day.
It would probably be something science fiction. Yeah. Or a possible future attraction. I gravitate to adventure stories, that's why I like Jules Verne so much, because he's about adventure and also about the future.
Pretty timeless. Yeah, I love that ancient future, seeds of steampunk in Jules Verne.
Anytime I heard Jules Verne mentioned at work, I would go,
"You're in.
I'm here."
Awesome. Well, that's planting a seed. I think I might have a project to talk to you about right after we hang out.
I love steampunk stuff.
Yeah.
I love anything that has organic lighting. That lighting is really a strong visual part of the story, like Avatar. Mm-hmm. I'm all over the place. To be frank with you, I just like doing a variety of stuff.
Well, I love your energy, Joe, and I love your just almost childlike, winsome, whimsical, just passion and energy for the art and the craft of what you and we get to do. And thanks to everyone that joined. Thanks so much, Joe, for the time, and really just can't thank you enough. And we'll make sure that this is available offline, because some of that your to-do list for starters was just so invaluable, and so really appreciate it.
Let me also thank everybody for showing up. I can't see your faces, all your faces, but thank you for being here today.
Likewise. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Joe. You're a rock star, man. We appreciate you.
Thanks. Catch you later.